I had a friend who recently passed, but he had this great saying, and he said, to be green, you gotta still make the green. And that's critical. We've got to be able to have a strong economic component to even our sustainability discussions, because if we can't come out here and actually grow a crop that people are going to eat, that farmers can live on, that farmers can have a livelihood with, and we're just farming if we can't do that. And so it's very critical to have strong economic component to the discussions, whether that's cover crop or increased efficiency in water use or whatever the case is. And so as it relates to cover crop, one of the areas that I think is critical moving forward is a cost-benefit analysis, particularly for almonds and walnuts here in California Central Valley. We need to look at this in detail. We need the researchers to collaborate with the growers, and we need to come together and maybe get an economist involved and say, okay, what does it actually cost to plant cover crops? And then if we can, monetize the benefits over a particular amount of time. Now, anyone who understands cover crop and economics will tell you that you can't plant a cover crop and see perhaps economic benefits right from the beginning. Sometimes you can, for weed competition or something like that. But the longer term benefits is really what I think growers are looking at. So are there benefits, monetary benefits in nitrogen, for example? We have a research project that's going to try to quantify in the orchard ecosystem, the orchard environment, whether or not we can actually get nitrogen benefits, and if we can monetize that and say, okay, usually we put on 150 to 250 pounds of ammonium sulfate in the fall for a full production orchard. Well, that's a lot of conventional fertilizer going out here, and hopefully it all gets utilized. But at the end of the day, is there another more sustainable, even cheaper way to do that with a plant that you've already planted, right? There's operational challenges to that, and we're every year trying to tackle those operational challenges. That's a huge question. I mean, the idea that you can possibly get anywhere from 130 to 150 pounds per acre out of nitrogen fixing plants for your main crop, that's a significant thing. As an operator, I want to know when that nitrogen is going to be released. I want to know how to specifically tell if that nitrogen is going to be released at the right time, because timing is also critical. So there's all these kind of operational decisions and discussions, but you've got to start somewhere, and that's what we're trying to do. So economics is a key component of all of these sustainable questions. We're seeing a massive change in American agriculture, and it's really being driven by the consumer, the customer. The customer wants a pristine product at as very little cost as possible, with as very little inputs as possible, and especially very little chemical inputs as possible. And for the last, I would say, 50 to 75 years, that's not how things have worked. Just me coming into it, kind of analyzing it kind of at a macro scale, we as farmers, American farmers, and we're in a very small niche of American farming and specialty crops in California, but as American farmers, we've become very, very successful at growing crops. And that's kind of led itself to going to an international market, over this, long history of just doing big farming, right? And we've become very, very successful at that. A lot of that is because of university research, and a lot of that is actually because of synthetic inputs, okay? Synthetic controls, synthetic nitrogen, synthetic fertilizers. We've gotten to where we've gotten, by and large, because of the landscape. It's just evolved this way. Now, with the consumer saying that's not the way they want it, by and large, generally speaking, there's a massive change going on right now, and that change is forcing farmers to look at things differently. What kind of different inputs can we have? Can we move from a synthetic nitrogen to a more sustainable organic nitrogen? Is it out there? Does it release in the same amount as ammonium sulfate would? All of these different questions are growers are now being forced to look at. What I'm trying to do is trying to couple the research field that I pretty much know well, based on my background, and practical farming as it is done today. And when I couple those, there's usually big knowledge gaps about how research works, perhaps from a farmer's perspective, or how it should work. And how the farm works and practically functions to make the crops that we make. So research is a critical component, I believe, to coming front and center with that customer shift and these customer challenges and these customer pressures. And by and large, I think we need to be doing stuff differently anyway, right? If there is economic reasons why we should be doing something differently, that's a clear reason why we need to be researching it and validating whether or not we should change a particular operation or not. Clearly, you'll have a lot of farmers, and I really agree with this in many, many ways. The farmer is kind of the first conservationist, right? The dirt is really where our primary asset is. It's not in our tractor, it's not in our trucks. The dirt is what's important. If we mine everything out of the dirt because of our practices, because of the way we do things or have done things, this dirt is basically not going to be useful. It's not going to be valuable for us in the future. I think farmers by and large are understanding that. But to try to make a shift, because of tradition that's been going on for 50 to 75 years, that's trying to take a really big barge and turn it, right? And that takes some time. And by and large, that takes farmers going out there doing the research, which we're trying to do. It takes university researchers substantiating these things through quantitative analysis and statistical analysis, and it just takes time, experience, and a lot of money. Way back, thousands and thousands of years, we flood irrigated because that was the technology. We knew that water went downhill, right? Gravity, okay? And we knew that it was critical to life and plant health and growth and crops. Well, we've come a long way since then, okay? And particularly in the last 30 to 40 years, at least in our own kind of niche specialty crop world and tree nuts, we have actually become 33% more efficient with our water over that amount of time. We've gone from flood irrigation to kind of movable pipe irrigation, which is still a lot of volume coming out of sprinklers, to solid set systems, which you still see predominantly, to micro irrigation systems and drip systems, right? We're becoming much, much more precise with our water and how we're getting water into a tree and utilizing every drop. The motto is more crop per drop, right? And we're doing that. And this is a prime example of how sustainability and economics can play hand in hand, because what we have learned is that if there is an investment into some of these newer irrigation technologies, we're actually able to save much, much more money and utilize water in a much more efficient manner if we can just make a bit of an upfront investment in our own world here. So that's a critical story that we have to tell, that I think if we're able to make certain investments and we're able to start making some research decisions and saying, okay, let's try this, and then substantiate that, I think the economics will follow. And I think sustainability, our motto is you put life into the ground, you'll get life out. So let's go on that theory and let's plant these cover crops, let's put in a prime time irrigation system around soil types, let's do biosolarization, and let's see what happens, because I really do believe that if sustainability can equal economic viability if we do it right.